Thank you for watching this video. To best support the channel, please take a moment and click the subscribe button. Also, the links to purchase this fly and the materials to tie the fly are in the description. Today we are tying up a weightless October Caddis pattern. It's an extended body caddis and you can swap the chenille out to whatever color of caddis you're wanting to tie. In the vise, we are putting a Moonlit Tagata ML861 hook in size 10. It's a 3x short hook, so you get a lot of extra hook gap for that size 10 without having a lot of body. So it makes a great wide gap hook for this fly. Get your thread started on the vise, or on the hook, excuse me, and wrap your thread till it's about the halfway point of the flat part of the shank of this hook. And then you're gonna go ahead and grab some Semperfli suede chenille, and the color is brown olive. It looks a little yellowish in this light, but in normal sunlight it's a little bit more of a pale orangish color. So we want to have our tie-in point be at the halfway point with the chenille going a little bit in front of that so that we don't tie too far back. And we'll just get that tied in nice and tight. We're going to leave our chenille long just for a minute, so we want to make sure we measure everything out at the end of the fly. So we're going to create a dubbing loop, and we're going to tie off our thread and wrap our thread forward so we can get it out of the way. And we're going to go ahead and take some black disco dub from Nature's Spirit, and we're going to break that into a bunch of little pieces. From here, we're going to go ahead and place those broken fibers of disco dub into our dubbing loop, and we're going to get that in there so it's split 50-50 on each side of the loop. And then we're going to go ahead and spin our thread and get that into a tight little dubbing rope. Now that we got that spun up a little bit, we're going to take our wire brush and brush those fibers out, trying to keep them from being too trapped in there. We want this to be as buggy as we can because they're going to end up being the leg portion of our caddis right here. So we're going to take our dubbing loop and we're going to wrap it around our hook so that we can get some coverage. So once we start getting to the dubbing portion, we want that to be right at the halfway point or our tie-in point from our suede chenille. And we're just going to pull our fibers towards the back of the hook and give a really buggy front half of this hook so that we can make it look as wiggly as we possibly can. See me, each time I wrap around, just pull everything back. And I'm not terribly worried that a lot of it's on the top half of the hook right now. We're going to clean that up in just a moment. So now that we're to the front of the hook, don't go too far forward. You don't want to trap your tying thread and make it so you're covering up the eye of the hook. So we'll go ahead and do some crossing wraps behind and under that dubbing loop so that we can get everything nicely secured. And then I'll come in with our tying scissors and trim off the excess dubbing loop. Now we'll come back in, do a couple of wraps to clean up any loose fibers that are right there at the head, and then we'll grab our whip finish tool and we'll throw in a whip finish, and that'll finish off the tying part on this fly. So you can see we had a loose fiber try and fly away there. Just pull that back, not to get trapped in the knot that we're tying, and trim off our tying thread. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pull all those fibers forward and down, get them off the chenille as much as we can. And you'll see that we have quite a bit of excess material down there. So we're just going to do a quick rough trim, get it right between the gape of the hook and the shank of the hook and the hook point. And we're just going to clean that up a little bit, pull everything down. And what we're going to do now is grab some Raid Zap in the thick resin and we're going to put that on top of the fly. And that's going to help lock those fibers in a downward orientation. And it gives us a nice clean top to the fly, kind of a smooth back shell to this fly. And be careful not to go too crazy on the resin. You don't want to make it too bulky up there, but do what you feel is right. I'm going to come in with the quill of my pheasant tail feather and smooth that out a little bit and let it kind of flow the way that I want it to. Now we'll come in with our UV light and cure that resin. Give it a couple of seconds of zap. Better to have it fully cured than not. Now we're going to come back, zoom in a little bit on the fly, get a little bit closer. And now we're going to trim those legs so that they're in the top third of that point between the shank and the hook point. Just want to trim that up so it's nice and short, but still wiggly and buggy enough to give the appearance of legs when underwater. Now that's the length that we want them to be. Catch a loose fiber real quick. Now those are the now that the legs are the length we want them to be, we're going to come in with a little bit more resin and just seal off the head of the fly where we have those exposed tying wraps. Be careful not to get resin in the eye of your hook. It makes it a lot harder to fish when you can't tie it on properly. Now that we have those thread wraps covered with resin, we'll grab our light again and cure it. And from here, we're going to go ahead and measure our tail out and trim that appropriately. So you want that to be 1 shank length on from the back of the curve of the shank to the front end of the eye in length. So cut that off, then I'll grab a lighter and singe the back end of this to keep it from unraveling and give it a little bit more durability in the water. Look at this, I left my tail a little longer than what I said. So let's go ahead and trim that up and get that to be the right length. So I left a little bit too much space, so I'm going to trim that a little shorter. Pull that off and then singe it with the lighter again, get it the right length. Just compare it to the previously tied fly, make sure they're consistent. And now we'll singe that tail with the lighter, and boom. The fly is now complete. Thank you for watching this video. If you haven't taken a moment to subscribe to the channel yet, please do. And also, the link to the materials is in the description of the fly. Thank you. Bye-bye.